to the channel and welcome to episode 4 of my solo play Age of Fantasy Skirmish campaign. If you haven't yet seen the previous 3 episodes, please do check them out because there will obviously be spoilers in this one. To start with, the Goblins, known as Dribblesnot's Sneaky Gits, are currently on 4 victory points, and the Havoc Warrior Disciples, known as the Beasts That Hunger, are currently on 2 victory points. Very quickly to recap over the warbands. On the left, for the Goblins, they are being led by Dribblesnot's Sneaky Git. He is a cave shaman and he's had several upgrades. So he is currently headstrong, which gives him +1 to morale. He is resilient, which gives him +1 to save rolls. He is a duelist, which gives him -1 to hit in melee, and he's a fanatic, which gives him +1 attack in melee. And I've got to try and remember all that. We've got Swampy Stompy the Forest Troll. He is a specialist in melee, which gives him +1 to hit in melee, and he is resilient, which gives him +1 to save rolls. We've got a unit of 3 cave archers who are a unit, so they activate as a unit and they shoot and fight as a unit rather than as individual models. They have yet to receive any upgrades. And then we've got the newest member of the warband, we've got Slobbergob the Cave Beast. Moving on to the Beasts That Hunger, they are being led by Harrick, the Lord of War. He hasn't had any upgrades yet. In fact, he's got worse. He suffered a chest wound in the first game, which gives him -1 to save rolls. And none of the other units have upgraded either, although Grag the Howler, who is this guy here, and Greekar, who is this Gore Reaver, they're currently sat on 4 experience points, so 1 more experience point each and they will get an upgrade. So all they've simply got to do is survive this next mission and they will get upgraded. However, surviving the mission is easier said than done. The Goblins, their points value for their warband is currently 200 with the various upgrades that they've had, whereas the Beasts That Hunger, their points cost is currently 180. So that means there's a 20-point difference, and for every 10 points, for every full 10 points, the warband that is worth the least receives 1 underdog point. So they're going to get 2 underdog points for this mission, and you can use an underdog point to modify your own or your enemy's dice roll by +or -1, and you can only use 1 point per roll. Now for this mission I'm going to do something a little bit different. We've just been playing the standard rules, which is what you're supposed to do in the campaign, but I'm going to mix it up a little bit. I'm going to use the mission cards. So if you haven't seen them, they're available free as a resource from the one-page rules website, and there's 2 ways you can use them. You either draw 3 cards and then both players have to try and complete those missions. So for example, if you draw this one, control objective marker 2, so you'd get 1 victory point for that. Alternatively, you have a deck for each warband and you draw 3 cards for each warband, and they then have to try and complete those objectives. So I'm going to go for the latter. I'm going to try using a deck for each and see how we get on with that, just to again add a bit more spice rather than just trying to control the objectives. So within there might be things like make the opposing warbands fail a morale test, or try and kill the enemy leader, or try and kill a wizard, something like that. So something a bit more specific. And on that note, we need to roll for the special objectives for each warband. So at the start of each mission, you roll a dice for each warband, and that equates to a special objective that they get bonus points for at the end of the game. But those are points to spend on upgrading their warband rather than victory points. And if you complete your special objective, you get 10 extra points to spend on your warband at the end of the game. So we've got green dice for Goblins, red, black and brass dice for the Beasts That Hunger. Okay, so we've got a 1 and a 4. So 1 for the Beasts That Hunger is Mastery, so 1 friendly unit in each table quarter at the end. Okay, so by the end of the battle, ideally they need to have 4 units left. 4 for the Goblins is Recovery, first player to recover a unit from stun. Now they've had that one before, and I think it's quite tricky to achieve for the Goblins, but we shall see. Right, let's move on to the mission setup. Okay, so we're set up I've distributed the 6 objectives as evenly as I possibly can. So starting in the middle, we've got 2 down the centre line, equidistant between the edges and each other, and then we've got 2 over here, so again equidistant from each other and from the 2 in the centre, and again 2 over here, equidistant between the centre and the edge. And again with scenery, I've tried to make it as symmetrical as I possibly can so that neither side has got a particular advantage. The stony naan in the centre, that is going to count as terrain for the purposes of achieving cover and making movement difficult and things like that. Everything else is simply impassable. The Beasts That Hunger won the roll-off for deployment, and they chose this table edge. Well, I chose it for them, and because they won the roll-off for deployment, they will get the first activation in the first turn. We've got Havoc in the centre with Gareth the Skull Splitter, and then on this edge we've got a Gore Reaver and a Gore Warrior, and on this edge we've got a Gore Reaver and a Gore Warrior. For the Goblins, we've got Swampy Stompy on their right flank, our left. We've got Dribble Snot in the centre with Gwang's Twang Gang, the 3 archers, and then hiding behind the rock we've got Slobbergob. So the mission objective cards for the first turn, the blue edged ones, or the ones in the blue sleeves, are for the Goblins. So we've got Arcane Channeling, so successfully cast or block 1 magic spell, you get a victory point. If you do 3, which is impossible, you'll get 2. We've got Outflank, so no enemy units within 6 inches of the centre of the battlefield. That's interesting. And no enemy units within 12 inches of the centre will get 2 victory points instead of 1. And then Seize Objective 4. For the Beasts That Hunger, we've got Seize Objective 4, Seize Objective 3, and then Spellbreaker, destroy an enemy model with the wizard rule. So that's interesting, that's the enemy general. Now the way I'm doing this is, if a card comes up that is impossible for them to do, so for example it had been the other way round and the Goblins had drawn this one, which is impossible because the Beasts That Hunger don't have a wizard, I'd have simply cast that aside and drawn a new card. Likewise, if we'd have drawn this one for the Beasts That Hunger, we'll cast that aside and draw a new card. So they have to be possible, in the same way that the special objective rolls that we do at the beginning of the game, they have to be possible to achieve. That's the way I'm doing it. So for random events, at the start of each turn we roll a die, and on a 5 or a 6 there's a random event. And there isn't. Right, so the first activation for turn 1 goes to the Beasts That Hunger. They have got to capture objective 3, which is this one, and objective 4, which is over there by Swampy Stompy. Just for reference, that one over there by the Goblins is objective 1, this is 2, we know that's 3 and that's 4, this one is 5, and the other one over there behind the rock is 6. If I'd have been really sensible, I'd have done all the evens on one side and all the odds on the other. That probably would have made sense, or made it easier for myself. But there we go. Yeah, and in addition, they need to kill the enemy wizard. So I think the first activation, we're going to activate this Gore Reaver, Strack, and he's just going to simply advance onto that objective. And there he is, and the chances of him being pushed off that objective before the end of the turn are pretty slim, so that should be a guaranteed point for the Beasts That Hunger. The Goblins have also got Seize Objective 4, and that's the one that's right in front of Swampy Stompy, as we just discussed. And so for their first activation, Swampy Stompy is simply going to rush, so he's going to go past the objective and get himself further down the field. And there he is. He's moved about 9 inches in total, keeping the back of his base within 3 inches of that objective marker. For the Beasts That Hunger, Gareth the Skull Splitter has rushed forwards to the edge of the difficult terrain, and that's a movement of about 7 inches there, so that means he can't now enter the difficult terrain. But that means that he is now within 6 inches of the centre of the battlefield, and the centre of the battlefield is where the 1 is on that white d6. So yeah, that's denying the Goblins some points, because they get points at the end of the turn. if there's no enemy units within 6 inches of the centre, or more points if there's no enemy units within 12 inches of the centre. So it's not just thinking, how can we score points for this warband with these cards, it's also how can we deny points to the enemy warband. Now unfortunately in doing that, Gareth has made himself a nice tempting target for Dribblesnot, who has advanced forwards and is currently on objective 1. They don't need objective 1 for this turn, but it's a good idea for him to be there for future turns. And Dribblesnot is now going to cast Glare at Gareth. Now if this passes, it will achieve the objective for casting a spell, but it does actually have to cast. Now ordinarily it's a 4+, but because Dribblesnot is Wizard 2, he gets +2 to this, so 2+. Anything other than a 1. And that's a 4. So that will be 1 automatic hit on Gareth at AP2. Ordinarily Gareth gets a 4+ save, so this will be a 6-up save. That's definitely a fail. So he takes 3 automatic wounds, because it's deadly 3, and Gareth is tough 3. So now we roll a die, and on a 5 or a 6, he will get knocked out. And that's a 2, so he's simply stunned. Again, thinking ahead to future turns, Kerulk the Berserk has rushed forwards, because as their overarching special objective for this game, they want to have a unit in all 4 quarters of the board by the end of the game. And also, any cards that they don't score this turn, they can carry over to next turn. So we're probably not going to be able to take out Dribblesnot this turn, but that's not to say we can't keep this card for next turn. For the Goblins, Gwang's Twangang are going to shoot at Gareth, who is currently stunned. Now if any of these do successfully hit, that will automatically knock out Gareth. Now I am going to say he gets the benefit of cover, because he is effectively lying down on the other side of all of that rough terrain. So this will be 3 shots hitting on unmodified 6s. Well, hitting on 6s, but unmodified 6s are always hits. Now the key words there are unmodified, and the rules say regardless of modifiers. So even if we do roll a 6, we can't modify that down by 1 using an underdog point, because it's still an unmodified 6, it will always hit. That's the way I'm interpreting that. Oh, there's 1 hit, so that will knock out Gareth. So far, bless him, he's not had much chance to show us what he can do. And that will be another XP for knocking out an enemy unit for Gwang's Twangang. And now Havoc has rushed forwards, effectively taking up the same position as Gareth, again with the intention of denying points to the Goblins at the end of the turn for being within 6 inches of the centre of the battlefield. And the only unit that is yet to activate for the Goblins is Slobbergob, the Cave Beast, and he is simply going to advance onto objective, we decided that's objective 6. It's the number of big crystals sticking up from the cluster. So that is objective 6. He is simply going to advance onto it. Now it's a shame because he's got the boing special rule, and at some point I hope to be able to show that off. And what that is, if he advances an additional +2d3 inches, and if he rushes or charges he can move an additional 3d3 inches. So for now he's just going to move on to that objective. Hopefully he'll be able to boing in the next turn. And for the remaining Havoc Warrior Disciples who haven't activated yet, Grag the Howler has rushed forwards, again thinking like his colleague on the other flank, and Greekar has also rushed forwards onto that objective, ready for later turns. So at the end of the turn, let's see how we've done for scoring objectives. Right, so for the Goblins, they have seized objective 4, so they'll score that one. They have successfully cast a spell, so they achieved that one, so that puts them on 2 points, but it was only 1 spell because they've only got 1 wizard. However, they have not achieved outflanked because there is an enemy unit within 6 inches of the centre of the battlefield. So that will be 2 points for the Goblins. And we can now discard 1 card after we've scored them. So I think we're going to discard outflank, so we'll get 3 fresh cards for the Goblins at the start of turn 2. For the beasts that hunger, they have not achieved Spellbreaker yet. They have not seized Objective 4. However, they are in control of Objective 3. So they will score that one, so they will score 1 point. Now again, we can discard one of these remaining 2 for the next turn. We can't discard both. And I think we will go for... I think we'll keep Spellbreaker, because, yeah, if nothing else, it focuses the attention on taking out the enemy wizard. So yeah, we'll stick with Spellbreaker and discard Seize 4. At the start of turn 2, these are the cards drawn for the Goblins, and it's not a great draw, I don't think. So hold 3, that's down near the deployment zone for the Beast of Hunger, so it's going to be tricky to get to that. Seize 5, same problem. Area Dominance, control any 3 objective markers. Now they're already on 3, so it's just a case of making sure that none of them are being contested at the end of the turn. For the Beasts that Hunger, they've still got Spellbreaker from the previous turn, and they've drawn Hold 5, which means you need to control that objective marker at the beginning and end of the same turn, or same round. Now they're already doing that. They've got Greekar is currently on Objective 5, so if he can stay there, or one of them can stay there by the end of the turn, then yeah, that'll be points for the Beasts that Hunger. And then C6, so that's again an incentive for the Beasts that Hunger to be pushing forwards, because that's over near the Goblins deployment zone. It's the one that Slobbergob is on. So again, getting units into all 4 corners and also contesting that vital 3 objectives that the Goblins need to be scoring points this turn. So going to be an interesting round, this one, I think. And finally, is there going to be a random event? No, there isn't. Goblins get to activate first because they finished activating first in the first turn. And Dribblesnot is going to cast Glare on Kerulk the Berserk. Now the idea is he's currently in charge range of Kerulk, so because you can cast the spell at any point during the activation as long as it's before an attack, he can then Scarper, as he's wont to do, kind of hit and run tactics from the wizard. Right, so again this will go off on a 2+, and that's 5. So this will be a 5-up save for Kerulk because he's got 3-up armor, and it's AP -2, and that saves. So no damage done to Kerulk the Berserk. So now Dribblesnot is going to back off out of charge range, and that should keep him safe from that objective for taking out the enemy wizard. For the Beasts that Hunger, Grag the Howler is going to charge around behind Swampy Stompy, because that way he'll be contesting that objective and potentially doing some damage to Swampy. And Swampy has turned to face the threat. This will be 3 attacks, and this will hit on 3s. And that's only 1 hit, but I think we'll spend an underdog bonus to turn one of these 2s into a 3, so that'll be 2 hits. No AP on these, so 4-up saves now on Swampy because he's resilient. And both of those save. Okay. Potential waste of an underdog bonus there. And Swampy can now fight back. So he gets 3 attacks, hitting on 3s because he's a specialist in melee. All 3 hit. And even if you modify one of those down, it will still be a hit. He's at AP1, so these will be 4-up saves. Okay, and I think we'll spend the last underdog point to increase that 3 to a 4, so that no damage gets done to Grag. And then Grag will have to back off an inch, which will only put him closer to that objective. And for the Goblins, Swampy needs to clear that Gore Warrior off the objective, otherwise we're not going to be scoring any points this turn. So he's going to charge, and because he's already fought in combat this turn, he'll only be hitting on unmodified 6s, but 3 attacks, and that's 1 hit. AP1, so 4-up save, and that's a save. Greg can fight back with 2 attacks this time because he hasn't charged on this particular occasion. Again, hitting on unmodified sixes. And that's 0 hits. So now Swampy has to back off an inch. So that's now going to make it pretty tricky for the Goblins to score any points. Not impossible, but certainly tricky. For the Beast That Hunger, Kerulk the Berserk is going to rush forwards towards Objective 1. Now, Dribblesnot deliberately moved back out of charge range, but Kerulk can still contest that objective. So he's rushed forwards, and now there's 2 units contesting objectives that the Goblins need to hold. So that's going to make it even less likely that the Goblins are going to score any points at the end of this turn. So the problem is, we've got 2 units left to activate for the Goblins. We've got Slobbergob there, who could charge Kerulk the Berserk, and if we take him out with Slobbergob, then that means the archers then have to shoot Grag the Howler and knock him out. And that's so that we've still got a chance of scoring points. And then what can happen is, this guy can rush forwards to contest that objective, so then we still won't get any points, and these guys need to hold this objective, so Harak can simply rush over to hold that objective to make sure we score the 2 points for that. So, thinking ahead a bit like that, I think we're going to see if Slobbergob can charge Greekar, this Gore Reaver, and see if we can't take him out. So that way, if we can be contesting this objective, it's going to deny the Beast That Hunger 2 points, rather than them get 2 points and also deny the Goblins 1 point for contesting all of their objectives. So I think that's what we need to do, is damage limitation. So let's see if Slobbergob can indeed charge Greekar. Right, Slobbergob is actually 13 inches away from Greekar, and ordinarily that would be an impossible charge to make because you can only move twice your normal speed, so 12 inches. However, with the Boeing special rule, it means Slobbergob can move plus 3d3 inches. So that means he can get to Greekar and then some, possibly put himself closer to the objective and away from Harak, so out of some kind of retaliation from Harak. So let's see how far he can move in addition. So 1, 3, that'll be 4, 5, 6. So he can move, what's that, 18 inches altogether? 12 plus 6? Yep. Right, so actually Slobbergob doesn't need to move all of that 16 inches, he just needs to move the 13 to get into contact. Now, I figured it was better for him to charge the Gore Reaver and get the first hit in, rather than come around here with the extra movement and then risk being charged. So he will get to attack, Slobbergob will get to attack with 2 attacks, hitting on 4s. They both hit. 6s are nothing special. However, these are AP1, so this will be 6 up saves. And so that will be 2 fails. So yeah, that will be 2 wounds on Greekar. So 2 plus d6 is 2, so that's 4, so Greekar is stunned. Can Slobbergob kick him out of the way on a 4 plus? That's a 6. So we'll just kick Greekar away 2 inches, and Slobbergob is the charging unit who did not defeat his opponent. He hasn't knocked out Greekar, so he then has to pull back 1 inch, but he's still within 3 inches of that objective. He's now contesting it. Now then, what that means is, for the next activation for the Beast That Hunger, we can stand up Greekar and effectively recover him from a stun, and that will then deny the Goblins their special objective for the game, which is be the first Warband to recover a unit from stun. So Greekar simply stands up and gets marked as activated. Right, I think we've accepted that, yeah, the Goblins are not going to score their mission card for holding 3 objectives at the end of the turn. Instead, they're going to shoot at what they've got the better chance of taking out, and that is Greekar. So this will be 3 shots hitting on 5s. That's 1 hit. This will be a 5-up save. That's 4. So that's 1 wound. So that puts Greekar up to 3. So 3 plus 2 is stunned, so he's stunned again. Havoc has rushed over to the objective. Again, we need to think about holding it or contesting it for future turns. Now, again, this won't be sufficient to fulfill the mission card of holding it because it's currently contested. But Havoc can't get all the way in to complete the charge. All of the goblins have now activated, and the last activation for the Beast at Hunger, Strack is simply going to stay on that objective because again they need a unit in all 4 quarters and he's currently the only unit in this quarter. That will be the end of the turn, so let's have a look at mission objectives and see who's got how many victory points. So no points for the goblins. We don't control 3 objective markers, we only control 1. We don't control objective number 5, although we are currently contesting it, and we don't hold objective number 3. Now we can only discard one of these, we have to keep the other 2, so I think we're going to discard hold 3 because they're the more tricky ones to achieve. Anything with hold on it are the trickier ones to achieve, so we'll discard that, but we need to keep the other 2 for next turn. For the Beast at Hunger, yeah, no victory points for them either, so they still haven't killed the wizard. They haven't managed to hold objective 5 because it's currently contested, and they didn't seize objective marker 6. So an interesting game in as much as there was more concentrating on denying the enemy their victory points than there was about scoring your own. So again, we can only discard one of these. So again, because holding objectives are the trickier objectives to achieve, I think we'll discard hold 5 because at the start of the next turn we won't be in possession of it, we won't be controlling it because it's currently being contested by a very angry cave beast. So we'll discard hold 5. So at the end of turn 2 the score is 2 points to the goblins still and 1 point to the Beast that Hunger still, and it looks a bit like this. Down here by objective 5 we've got Greekar, who is currently stunned and on 3 wounds. Quite an easy target to take out if the goblins so choose, but Havoc and Slobbergob are currently contesting that objective. The Beasts that Hunger are still classed as having captured objective 2 even though Havoc moved off it, and over here we've got Strack is still on objective 3. Up here Swampy Stompy and Grag the Howler are contesting objective 4. Yeah, I just had to double check that because of all the pushing and shoving and the going backwards and forwards 1 inch. Yeah, Swampy is still within 3 inches of that objective, so it is still contested. Over here, Dribblesnot and Kerrilk the Berserk are contesting objective 1. Gwang's Twangang have got some good lines of fire to be shooting at, and behind that rock is objective 6 that Slobbergob moved off, but it's still classed as being held by the goblins. Start of turn 3, mission cards for the goblins. So they've drawn C6, control objective marker 6. They currently do control it, so all they need to do is retain control of it to get a point at the end of the turn. We've still got C5 and we've still got area dominance, which is control any 3 objective markers. And with the goblins drawing C6, that makes it interesting because the Beasts that Hunger also want objective 6. The new card they drew is hold 4, and that's the one that Grag the Howler and Swampy Stompy are currently fighting over. And then of course we've still got Spellbreaker. At the start of turn 3, is there going to be a random event? Oh yes there is, that's a 5. Purple die for 10s, green dice for units. 64. Coward's Reward. select one random warband which immediately gets D3 times 5 points. Okay. So, odds, it'll be the Goblins, evens, it'll be the War Disciples. So it's the War Disciples, so they get D3 times 5 points. I'm assuming it's times 5 because it's D3 star points, so I'm guessing the star is a bit like when using a computer calculator, you use the star sign for a multiplication. So D3 times 5. So 3 times 5, 15 points for the Havoc War Disciples. Yep, don't worry, I spotted it. That should be a 2 because it's D3, so that's 10 additional points for the Havoc War Disciples. Now, because some of the action seems to be centered around objectives 5, 6 and 4, objective 6 in particular, I think this is going to be quite interesting in terms of looking at who is going to do what. Now, the Goblins are going to get the first activation, and for the first activation, Dribblesnot is going to cast Glare on Kerulk the Berserk and then rush over to this objective. You know the drill, 2+, that's 5, so that goes off. Automatic hit at AP2, so 5 up save, and that saves. And now Dribblesnot is going to scarper that way towards marker 6. Right, for some reason when I filmed the next bit, the camera had somehow been knocked into slow motion mode. So yeah, you couldn't really tell what I was saying. So just to quickly summarise, rather than hash it by resetting everything and re-rolling everything, because that would just be wrong, yeah, I'll just talk you through what happened. Kerulk the Berserk charged Dribblesnot and inflicted 1 wound. Dribblesnot fought back and inflicted no damage. So that will be the end of Kerulk the Berserk's activation. Now, just to clarify, in case you missed it from previous episodes, Dribblesnot is tough 3, so we don't roll to see if he's knocked out until he's taken at least 3 wounds. So Slobbergob is going to charge Greekar, so that's an automatic KO, and Slobbergob is still within 3 inches of this objective. Right, you're about to see an excellent example of fundamentally flawed tactical thinking, purely because I completely forgot that the Goblins had Seize Objective 5 as a mission card. But such is the problem of playing games by yourself. But please stay tuned until the end. Now, because Seize Objective 6 is an active card for both the Warbands, and also the War Disciples still want to kill the enemy wizard, I think Havoc is going to overcome his temptation to take out the Cave Beast and rush towards Objective 6, because that way there'll be 2 of their decent warriors around Objective 6 and also around the enemy wizard. So again, thinking ahead to next turn. The War Disciples then would not have a unit in every quarter for their overall special objective. But if they achieve that, it only gives them plus 10 points to spend on units, and from the random event at the start of the turn they've just got 15. 10, it's definitely 10, not 15, it's 10. So yeah, I think we can afford to possibly forego that in favour of trying to get more points to win the game. So let's do that. Havoc is going to rush towards Objective 6. And that just puts him within 3-inch range of Objective 6. Over here, Swampy Stompy is going to charge Grag the Howler. He will get 3 attacks hitting on 3s. 2 hit. 4 up saves. Both fail. So that's 2 wounds on Grag, which will at least stun him, which isn't going to really help them for their hold Objective 4. Let's roll to see if he's knocked out. That's a 4 plus 2. The 2 wounds he just suffered is 6. So yes, Grag the Howler is knocked out. So that in itself will mean that right here, right now, the Beast of the Hunger will not have a model in every quarter. But again, still ways to work around that, maybe. No, there isn't. They've only got 3 models left. And then Swampy has consolidated 3 inches towards the deployment zone of the Beast of Hunger, so again puts him in a bit better tactical position if at any point he needs to seize one of these two objectives, or indeed go back to defend 4. And a bit like before, Strack is just simply going to stay still. There's nothing he can get to help with the mission objectives, so he's just going to stay there where he's out of the way, out of harm's way, and yeah, wait and see what happens next turn. Now then, the Havoc Warrior Disciples have now finished activating all their units. There's still a Goblin unit left to activate, Gwang's Twangang. So that means on the next turn, the Havoc Warrior Disciples will get the first activation. Over here, Gwang's Twangang have shuffled slightly and they're going to shoot at Kerulk for the Berserk. So 3 shots hitting on 5s. That's 1 hit. That one there, that was a 5. 3 up save. That fails. So 1 wound inflicted on a 5 or a 6, he'll get KO'd. Okay, so the Goblin Archers seem to be developing a speciality in taking out Gore Warriors. Now at the end of the turn, the Beasts That Hunger need to take morale tests, and Strack is not within 12 inches of Harrock, so he has to use his own quality for this, so 4 up. Yep, he's good, he's going to stick around. And then Harrock, he's got quality 3+, but he's going to run away, which means he won't be contesting that objective. So at the end of turn 3, we'll do the victory points for the Havoc Warrior Disciples. They're currently on 1, the Goblins currently on 2. The Havoc Warrior Disciples do not get hold 4. They do not get Spellbreaker because they still haven't killed that meddlesome wizard, and they did not manage to take objective 6. So no additional points for the Havoc Warrior Disciples. For the Goblins have got C6, so that's an extra point, putting them on 3 points to 1. They've seized objective 5, so that's another point, which puts them on 4 points to 1, and they've got area dominance because they're currently holding at least 3 objectives. Are they? Yes, only just. Had to measure up, but Gwang's Twangang are within 3 inches of objective 1. So yeah, they do get 2 victory points for that. So that will put them on 6 points to 1. So realistically, I don't think there's any way back for the Havoc Warrior Disciples. I think the Havoc Warrior Disciples are going to concede there. So some quick if, buts and maybes. If Harrock had managed to take out Slobbergob, the Cave Beast, and held on to objective 5 rather than rushing on to objective 6, then the Goblins would not have got the point for Seize 5, and they probably wouldn't have got area dominance either, because I stupidly moved Swampy Stompy off objective 4 after it was initially contested. So technically the Goblins weren't holding that objective. They were holding 3 as the game played out in front of you. They were holding objectives 1, objective 6 and objective 5. So they were holding 3 objectives, but they weren't holding objective 4. So if Harrock had managed to take objective 5, or rather secure objective 5 and prevent the Goblins from getting it, then that would have meant the Goblins would have only got 1 extra point, which would have put them on 3 points to 1. But I'm going to assume that Harrock would still have run away. And then for the maybe, what could have happened, I drew the next card for the Beasts That Hunger, assuming they discarded 1 card that they had that turn, and it was Seize objective 1, and there's no way that Strack could have got to objective 1. So we're still going to class this as a Goblin victory. About the only thing that could possibly have altered is Harrock could have got an XP for taking out Slobbergob, but the world is full of ifs, buts and maybes, and war games are full of if, buts and maybes, and like I say, it's the problem of being a solo wargamer. You've got to remember everything all by yourself with nobody there to help you and prompt you. So apologies for that, but hey, it's just a game. Onto the post-game admin. So Dribblesnot Sneaky Gits won the game, so they get a further 2 victory points for the campaign, putting them on 6. The Beast That Hunger lost, so they don't get any extra victory points, so they are still on 2. So Dribblesnot Sneaky Gits definitely taking the lead in the campaign, 6 victory points to 2 overall. Neither of the Warbands achieved their special objective that was set at the start of the game, so no bonus points to spend on the Warbands for either one. However, the Beast That Hunger did get an extra 10 points to spend on the Warband by virtue of the random event, plus their 30 for coming last gives them 40 extra points to spend. They've currently got 30 in the bank, giving them 70 points to spend in total. The Goblins win, so they get 10 points to spend on the Warband, plus the 15 they've got in the bank, giving them 25 points to spend on the Warband in the recruitment section of the post-game events. Right, on to casualties, rolling for casualties. We have got 4 casualties, all of them for the Beast That Hunger. So we've got Grag the Howler, Kerulk the Berserk, Greekar and Grareth the Skull Splitter. So we'll go from left to right. On a roll of a 1, they are dead. On a roll of a 6, they recover with an extra XP, and on anything else they simply recover. Right, so Grag the Howler is fine. Kerulk the Berserk is fine. Greekar is fine with an extra XP. And then finally Grareth the Skull Splitter is fine. So no fatalities from that particular game. On to experience. Right, so Swampy Stompy gets 2 more XP, 1 for knocking out an enemy unit and 1 for surviving the mission. So he didn't get knocked out himself. So that puts him on 14 points, so not enough to level up. Dribblesnot Flashbang himself, he gets plus 1 XP for surviving, putting him onto 11. Gwang's Twangang, they get 2 XP for knocking out 2 units and 1 XP for surviving the mission, and that puts them on 6, so they're going to get an upgrade. And then the one that is potentially controversial due to my fluffing of understanding what everybody should have been doing on the last turn, but Slobbergob gets 2 XP, 1 for knocking out an enemy unit and 1 because he survived without getting knocked out himself. So as I say, a bit controversial, but hey, mistakes happen. So Gwang's Twangang will get an upgrade shortly. For the Beast That Hunger, Havoc the Exalted survived because he fled. So just to remind you, that's the way I'm working this. If you don't get knocked out, you survive the battle, even if you ran away during it. So he gets 1 XP for surviving the battle. Strack also gets an XP because he survived the battle, and then Greekar will get an XP because he is a natural talent. By recovering from his wound, he gets an extra SP. And that puts Greekar on 5 XP, so he's going to get an upgrade as well. Havoc the Exalted is on 2 XP and Strack is on 2 XP. So we're now going to work out the upgrades for Greekar and Gwang's Twangang. Starting with Gwang's Twangang, that's a 4, so they are resilient. They get plus 1 to their save rolls. So they'll be saving on 5s instead of 6s now. Cool beans. And then for Greekar, that's a 5, so he's elite. He may re-roll 1 die of any kind once per round. That's pretty smart. On to Warband upgrades and recruitment. There are no upgrades being purchased. However, the Beasts That Hunger have somehow managed to recruit, in air quotes, a Bloodhound. This is Terrafang, and he is a Rift Demon of War. And he has now joined the Beasts That Hunger. And I went for this simply because I think they need a bit of speed and a bit more toughness. So Bloodhounds are quality 3 up, defense 4 up, 2 attacks with their claws at AP 1. They are fast, so they've got the speed. They are furious, so extra attacks when they charge, and they are tough 3, and that's 60 points of Bloodhound. So that gives the Beast That Hunger 10 points left in the bank. Dribblesnot Sneaky Gits are banking their 25 points because I want to get some more goblins. And yeah, I could afford some regular goblins, but I want to stick with cave goblins, and I bought and painted a whole bunch of cave goblin spearmen, and to use a unit of 3 of them it's something like 40 points, so I need to keep saving for dribble slot sneaky gits. So that is the end of episode 4 of this campaign of Age of Fantasy Skirmish, and my apologies again for it being a bit scrappy. It felt a bit scrappy when I was doing it. I managed to catch most of the mistakes, I think, because the current format that I do when I record these is I record a turn, I edit it, and that way I try to catch as many of the mistakes as I can between turns, so they don't carry over into future turns. So yeah, film a turn, edit it, film a turn, edit it. That's the way I do it. So part of the problem, I think, was trying to use 1 deck of cards for each warband, and that just gave me 6 extra things that I had to remember. When I played Grimdark Future with the missus, we do use the mission cards, and that's easier because I've only got to remember 3 and she remembers the other 3. So for the next game I'm just going to do the version where you've got 3 cards and both warbands are trying to achieve those same 3 objectives. That's the way I'll do the next episode, and if I make loads of cock-ups with that one, I'll just go back to using the standard rules. So yeah, apologies again, felt a bit scrappy, not up to my usual standard, I appreciate, but again, thank you for your patience, and a big thank you especially because I've just topped 500 subscribers, and that's a huge boost to me. Thank you very much for that. So I am just doing this for my own personal pleasure. I'm not monetizing it, I'm not getting any money from YouTube because I'm not putting adverts on or anything like that. It's just me trying to share the hobby with like-minded people like yourselves. So thank you very much for your support. Thank you very much for your suggestions. Please keep them coming, and until next time, stay safe and God bless.